Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the series on the 1948 Catalina pinball machine. In this video, we're going to be focusing more on the cosmetics of this game. We're going to be upgrading all the lights to warm white LEDs. We're going to be replacing all of the rubbers that need replacing, and who knows what else we'll do in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do to this machine is replace all of the rubbers that need replacing. Now, I went through and I felt and stretched all of the rubbers in the machine, and the only ones that need replacing are the top two on this set of rubbers right here, and these two rubbers on these little plastic pieces. The rest of them are still super soft, they're not cracked, and they're going to be just fine. So, I found two rubbers that I think are going to fit here. So let's go ahead and take these old cracking ones off and we'll see if those fit. Yeah, that'll fit perfectly. And there we are. Two brand new rubbers that are not cracked. So unfortunately at the moment, I don't have two white rubbers of this size that will work. And upon further inspection, it's actually only this one that's cracked. This one doesn't crack when I stretch it. I do have a black rubber that looks like it's the right size. This isn't going to be permanent. I just want to see if that's the size of the rubber that I need to fit this around. Ooh, that's too small. Here's a bigger one. That's too big. So it's got to be an in-between size because this looks like it's too small. I might be able to get it on there if I really stretch it. Well, it's on there, but it's not happy about it, so I think I might have to get a bigger set of rubbers. For now, I'm just going to put the original back on since it's still okay. It's not hard or anything, it just needs to be replaced. So I'll have to come back to those two later. So let's start replacing some of our incandescent bulbs. And the first ones that I'm going to do are the two big bulbs that light up the back box when the machine is plugged in. So to get to those, all you have to do is remove the two clamps that hold this part of the back box in. We can open that up, and you can see the two bulbs right there. So I ordered a couple LEDs that are equivalent to the light bulbs that are in there, and they're more or less the same footprint. So I'm going to go ahead and swap those out, and we'll see what they look like. So here's one of the original bulbs, and here's the new LED. It's a little bit smaller, but it should do the trick. And there we go, two brand new LED bulbs installed. Let's go ahead and plug it in and see how it looks. Oh yeah, much brighter. And yep, they look exactly the same as the bulbs, which is what I wanted. So now, since we have LEDs back here, the back glass is not going to get hot, and there's going to be no more peeling because of that. So I think that is a good upgrade to do because it looks exactly the same, and there's no downsides to doing it. So that's the start of our LED replacement journey. Now another light that I did want to convert to an LED was the credit light bulb. So when there's at least a credit in the machine, the bulb lights up and it will show the number of credits in the machine on the back glass. I tried putting one of my pinball flashers in there, but those flashers take 13 volts to run, and I think that this might be a 6.3 volt bulb because I put the flasher in and it was extremely dim, so that's obviously not going to work. All right, it's a new day and it's a windy day today, so I closed the garage doors so that you don't have to listen to the wind noise. So I think what we're going to do today is install some LEDs in the top of the playfield. So I have my little drawer full of LEDs here. These are not the ones I ordered. These are some leftover stock that I had from another pinball machine I have. And those are cool white LEDs. I ordered 50 warm white LEDs, but that actually didn't turn out to be enough. So I figured I might as well just use my leftover cool white LEDs in places where it doesn't look like they'll be out of place. And it actually turned out perfect because I have 13 bayonet type LEDs, and for the pop bumpers, there are 11 of them. And then under here and under here, that's 2 more. And that is all of the upper playfield lighting. So I can install my cool white LEDs in all the pop bumpers, plus these 2 right here, and the rest can be warm white, and it shouldn't look out of place. So the first thing I'll do is I'll reset the game so that those lights light up, and we can see what they look like now. So as you can see, that is what the pop bumpers look like when the incandescent bulbs are installed. So the first LEDs I'm going to install are the ones in these 2 white bumpers here. And I already did test fit an LED in here, and it looks very good. So this is what these 2 bumpers look like now with incandescent bulbs. So let's take the cap off one of these bumpers. These were originally held in with a little bit of hot glue, so I'll have to hot glue these down once I'm totally done messing with the inside of those. So here's the bulb, so we'll unscrew it from the socket. There's the bulb. And now let's put a cool white LED in there. You can see it's quite a bit brighter, but look at the difference when you put the cap back on. Look at how much brighter that is compared to an incandescent bulb. So that is so much better, and I think the LEDs are going to make these pop bumpers look really nice. Let's go ahead and do the other one. Look at that, nice and bright. And those cool white LEDs don't even look out of place because these bumpers are white, and so having cool white LEDs just highlights the fact that these are actually white. So there we go, that's the first 2 LEDs installed. All right, let's go ahead and install the rest of these LEDs in the pop bumpers. Now, I don't think that for these bumpers it's going to make a huge difference, but I do want LEDs throughout this whole machine, so I'm going to replace them anyway. So let's first start with the N. The N is actually pretty bright, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the bulb that's in there. Obviously, this is a replacement bulb because it looks different than the rest of them. Put an LED in here. And that is much brighter. I don't know how well that comes across in the camera, but in person, that's a much brighter bumper now, so that's great. Let's do the A. Obviously, these bulbs have been in here for a very long time, because look at the corrosion on their bases. So those are definitely some old bulbs. Yeah, that one's nice and bright as well. Oh crap, that scared the shoot. We'll zoom in a little bit on the top of the playfield now, because that's where we're working now. Let's do the L and the I. These ones seem a little bit dimmer than the others, so I imagine these will become brighter once I put LEDs in them. Another old corroded bulb. Much brighter. Look at the difference between the L and the I. And there's the I. Much brighter than it was. All right, so now all we have left to do is the CATA plus the 50,000 bumper, and I'm going to do this one last because you have to actually turn off all of the pop bumpers by hitting them to light this one. So we'll do these 4 first. And there we go. All of the letter bumpers now have LEDs in them, and they look much better. They don't even look like cool white LEDs because of how the lenses look. It just looks like there's normal bulbs inside them. And that's exactly how I wanted this machine to look. I wanted to kind of keep its original feel while also upgrading it to LEDs. So it's exactly the look that I wanted. So now we'll do the 50,000 bumper and the 2 lights that are under here. Those only light up when you light up Catalina, and we can actually do that by just touching 2 of the in lanes over here. That one lights CATA, and this one will light LINA. For some reason that didn't light. Do you actually have to hit all of the bumpers to make these light? Oh, there we go. I don't know why I had to hit one of the bumpers again to make those light up, but as you can see, now they're lit, and now I can actually change them and see what they look like. I think this one's gonna look so much better with a cool white LED because the bumper is actually white. Yeah, much better with a cool white LED. Now it actually looks normal. So for these two, I'll have to remove the screws to get to the bulbs. Oh no, these are screw-in bulbs. Dang it. These are different. I don't have LEDs that'll work in those type of sockets. Well, what am I gonna do about that? All right, my warm white LEDs have arrived from Comet Pinball. So now we are ready to transform this machine into an LED-based machine. So I figure the first thing that we'll do is we'll start with underneath the playfield, because the only lights that are underneath the playfield are in this little area right here. There are no other lights underneath the playfield. So I figure that should be a very easy job. So let me first show you what the lights look like before I put LEDs in. So I'll advance the bonus so that we can see these lights light up. So there's the 25,000 light. So now I'll advance the bonus just by 1. You can see the light changes. So those are what the incandescent bulbs look like for the bonus lights here. And that's what an incandescent bulb looks like when it lights up one of the bigger bonus lights here. Now, when you light up Catalina, there are lights that are underneath these holes that light up too. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we can see those light up. As you can see, the light here is lit. There's one there, there's also one under here, and I'll be putting LEDs in there as well. So I don't know how well you can see that because the lights are kind of off to one side, but there are lights that are lighting up the interior of those holes. And you can see it a little bit better if I zoom in, but I will obviously be replacing the lights underneath those holes as well. So let's go ahead and open the playfield and get those swapped out with warm white LEDs. So looking at these lights underneath the playfield, it's going to be a pretty straightforward swap to LEDs, except there are 2 bulbs that are underneath this little piece of paper, and the reason this piece of paper is there is to protect the mounting metal for this coil from shorting out against the bulb sockets. So I'm going to have to take that coil out and then get behind that paper to swap these 2 specific bulbs. Otherwise, the rest of it is going to be really easy. So for example, swapping out this light, super easy. Just take it out of the socket and put in one of our new warm white LEDs, and that's it. So I'll just be doing that for all of these LEDs. I'll remove this coil so I can get back behind these 2, and I can see what it looks like after those get swapped out. All right, and that is what it looks like with all of the playfield LEDs in place. I was able to remove this coil and get behind this little piece of paper and swap over those 2 bulbs as well. So at this point, the entire underneath the playfield has now been converted to LEDs. So let's see how it looks. See, there it is right there. Let's keep going up and see what those look like. Yep, and each of them are working. There's the 50,000. I'll go up by 25,000 so that we can see the 100,000 light. And there it is right there. So there we go. Those are all of the lights. Well, actually, let's light up the kicker holes. We can do it by pressing this one. As you can see, there are the 3 LEDs lighting up those holes. So those are all of the under playfield LEDs. So the entire playfield is done. So at this point, the only thing left to convert to LEDs is the back box. So let's go behind there and do that. All right, so here is the inside of the back box, and you can see all of the bulbs all along here, along there, and up there. So I'm going to remove all of these and put warm white LEDs in their places. That shouldn't take too long. Well, I had a little bit of a snafu when converting the back box to LEDs. You see how all of these, except for one, are still bulbs? Well, that's because these are the screw-in type bulbs, and I didn't know that. And I don't have any of those bulbs, so I'm going to have to order another set of screw-in type LEDs to go in here. And the reason I was able to put an LED in this one is because someone actually changed out the socket for a standard bayonet type socket. Don't know why. You can tell it was reworked, but since it was a bayonet socket, I figured I'd put an LED in there so we can see how that looks. And then we'll be able to tell what it'll look like when all the LEDs are in here. But a large majority of these were bayonet sockets, so I was able to put LEDs in all of these lights and all of the lights that spell Catalina. The tilt light is a screw-in, so out of all the screw-in bulbs in the back glass, there's only 9, so that's not too bad. I'll just have to order a set of screw-in warm white LEDs, and then the back box should be fully converted, and that's something that I'll do off camera. So let's go ahead and test the LEDs that are in here and see how well they work. Well, I've gone ahead and reset the machine, and as you can see by the lights behind the word Catalina, those LEDs are nice and bright. So now let's go ahead and activate some of the other LEDs and see how they look. So as for the one single LED I was able to put in the 1000 to 9000 lights, the one that's an LED is the 4000 light, so we can activate that and see how much brighter it is compared to a bulb. Yeah, it looks about the same as a regular bulb, and I'm not really too concerned about the brightness. I'm more concerned about the back glass peeling because of the heat given off by the incandescent bulbs. So I think it looks good. Oh, I am wrong. It's not the 4000 that's an LED. It's the 5000. That's much brighter. I like that. And there's an LED right here for the 10,000. You can see that's quite a bit brighter as well. Yeah, it's the 5000 that's a LED, so I messed that one up. Yeah, I like that. That's a lot brighter. Let's go to 20,000. Yeah, much brighter. That looks really good. Let's score some 10,000 point targets just so we can go through these. So yeah, they're all looking nice and bright. They're all working, so that's great. So as I'm going through and testing the rest of the LEDs on the back box here, you might notice that the L in the word Catalina is out. Now, that's not because of a loose socket, that's actually because of a really good idea that the engineers had when making this game. So, as you know, when you hit one of the lit pop bumpers, it turns the light inside off. Well, it actually also turns off the corresponding LED on the back box. So when you hit the bumpers, it will eventually turn off all the lights that say Catalina when you hit all the bumpers. And I thought that was a really good idea when I first saw that. There we go. As you can see, all of the LEDs for the 10,000 and 100,000 point values are working, and they all look great. So the only thing left I have to do in terms of LEDs in this thing is get the rest of the 1,000 to 9,000 bulbs converted, and the 2 that are on the play field that are also the screw-in type bulbs. So I'll get a set of those, I'll convert those to LEDs. I'm sure I'll show what it looks like by the end, but that's something that I can do off camera, so that's not a big deal. We got most of this thing converted to LEDs, so I think it looks great. And I just realized something. Since I'm going to be putting screw-in LEDs into the back glass, that means I have spare warm white LEDs that I can use to put in these 3 bumpers here to make them look more like the rest of the bumpers. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 warm white LEDs in there, and we'll see how that looks. Yeah, that looks more in line with how I want the machine to look, especially given the fact that, if I move the camera a little bit up here, that the LEDs that are going to go in here are also going to be warm white, so now it's not going to be like this jarring difference between the 3 bumpers here and the rest of it. So I think that looks better. It looks more like an incandescent bulb, so I'm going to leave it like that. So now that we have the majority of this machine converted to LEDs, there is something that I wanted to check about the whole coil situation and why they are not able to eject the ball out of the hole on the first time. And I don't believe that it's a weakening of the coils, because sometimes the coil will eject very strong and sometimes it'll be very weak. So I have a hard time believing just on that characteristic that the problem is the coil. It almost seems to me like it's more of a bad switch contact. And since the switch is only held in for a short period of time, it only fires that coil for a split second. And I'm thinking maybe the contacts on the switch responsible for that are dirty, and so it's not sending the correct voltage to the coil every single time it fires. So as an example, I'll push on this switch and we can watch the coils fire. Actually, my bonus has to be at 0. So now it's at 0, so now it should fire. I don't know if it comes across well on camera, but I can definitely hear when it hits harder sometimes, and it doesn't hit as hard other times. So that leads me to believe that it's not a coil problem, and that's rather a switch or a voltage problem. And I can actually easily verify that by the use of a multimeter. So let's go ahead and hook one up, and then we can see if that is indeed the issue. So it's these 3 black coils that are responsible for kicking the ball out of the holes. And so what I'm going to do is hook up 2 wires to this coil. We'll just start with this one, and hook those up to a voltmeter. And we're going to see if the voltage pulses that are going through this coil are the same every time. And of course, we're going to be using an analog voltmeter so we can actually see those voltage pulses, because that's a lot harder to read with a digital meter. So I'm going to go ahead and get that whole thing set up, and then we'll take a look at what my meter says. All right, so here's the little precarious setup I got. I have 2 clip leads attached to both ends of the coil, and those are going down, attaching to both probes of my meter, and then the meter's right there. And as you can see, we're using a vacuum tube voltmeter. And the funny thing about this meter, it's 30 years newer than the pinball machine. So this isn't even an era-appropriate meter. But it's a good analog meter, so that's what we're going to use to test it. Now, the only thing that I have an issue with is I don't know which lead on the coil is the ground side. And so I don't know if when I apply power, the meter's going to go down, left, or up. So what I'm going to do to mitigate that is set the meter to its highest voltage reading, which is 1500 volts. I highly doubt there's that much voltage going through a coil. It's probably more closer to line voltage. But I just want to see which direction the needle moves so I can make adjustments to either the meter or my wiring. Okay, after spending a long time trying to figure out why I wasn't getting any voltage pulses out of this, I finally got it. So if we go to the AC setting on the meter and set it for 15 volts, you can see right now we have 0 volts. But if I go ahead and make the coil fire, it rises up. It looked like it was about 4 volts. Oh yeah, that was one of the times where I felt it fire a lot harder and the meter rose higher. So that confirms it right there. It's not the coil. It's something to do with what drives the coil. Probably a switch or a dirty contact. So let's just go ahead and do that a few times again just to show it. So that rose to probably about 4 volts. That was even less. That was about 5. As you can see, it rose to about maybe 7 volts that time. So that kind of confirms it. Okay, so now we kind of have an idea as to what the problem is. Not the coil, but what's something that drives the coil. So I'm going to go ahead and troubleshoot that and see where that leads me. Okay, the relay driving that coil mechanism has been found. It is one of my unlabeled relays. It is this one right here. So if I go ahead and push the coil that I was pushing earlier, you can see that is the relay that fires. So what that relay does is it is part of the transfer bonus circuitry. And so that one is responsible for making the bonus go down by 5,000. And it's also responsible for kicking the coils for the 3 bottom holes out. So I think we might have a dirty switch on this relay, because sometimes I've noticed that sometimes the bonus coil doesn't always like to go down, and when the bonus is doubled, if you light CATA on the playfield, whenever you land in one of those 3 holes, it will double your bonus, and so every time that coil goes down, it will score 10,000 points, and I've noticed that it has trouble doing that sometimes. So, and those are all wired to the same relay. I'm gonna go ahead and, do we have a double bonus? Yeah, we do. So every time I hit this coil, we should get a 10,000 point increase. And we didn't. And I could see this coil trying to activate. I don't think the bonus even went down. Well, that time it did. So the bonus, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So let's advance the bonus up a little bit. I gave it a 25,000 point bonus boost. And so let's make the bonus go down by 1. And I can do that by hitting this switch here. Okay, so that time it worked right. The bonus went down by 1, and we got a 10,000 point score boost. So I'm gonna hit that again. Okay, it worked again. Okay, that time the bonus went down, but the 10,000 point did not score. Now my question is, why would the 10,000 point scoring have trouble when I make the bonus go down? Because when I hit a 10,000 point target, it has no trouble at all. It advances 10,000 every time. So what I'm wondering is, when this relay goes down, is it trying to send power to the 10,000 point scoring coil? And since everything that we're having trouble with is wired to this same relay, is it due to a dirty contact on this relay that's not sending power out right? Because if I manually push this relay down, it makes the bonus go down, I believe. Let's advance the bonus up. So we should have, when I hit this relay, I should see the bonus coil go down. And it did. And these things kicked out, and we actually scored 10,000. So it's working. I think the problem with this whole thing is a dirty contact on this relay right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean that relay up, and we'll see if that fixes all of our problems with that. And you know what? I think I just confirmed that is the problem. Because if I hold this relay down, this is gonna get kind of loud, so. Those 3 coils are ejecting at full strength every single time. So that kind of confirms that we have a switch problem with this relay that needs to be fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the power to the transformer by hitting this other switch. So now there's no power going through any of this stuff. And I'm going to clean that relay up, and we'll see if our coils get stronger. Well, I went ahead and cleaned the switches on the bonus transfer relay as well as the 25,000 bonus relay, since we had coils tied to that one as well that also had issues, but that didn't seem to work. And as I was going and cleaning the switches for the relays, I also figured out what every relay underneath the playfield was for. So now they are all labeled. So if you have a 1948 Catalina pinball machine and you don't know what these relays do, here's what they do. So those first two score 1,000 to 5,000 points. That one advances the bonus coil to advance the bonus up by 5,000. That is the bonus transfer and scoring relay, so that will advance the bonus down and give you the proper score depending whether or not the bonus is doubled or not. That's the 25,000 bonus relay. That's the 50,000 point score relay. And that one scores you 5,000 points when the bonus advances. So when the bonus coil advance relay goes, this one will go as well, and this is the one that gives you the 5,000 points. So for this set of relays, this top one here activates the transformer. So if you make it so the switch closes, it will kick on and the transformer will activate, and everything else on the play field and down here will activate. And then this is the kill switch for the transformer, so you close that and that turns the transformer off. Right there is the slam tilt switch. And as for all of these relays here, these ones work a little bit differently. There's a coil inside each one of these little areas here, and it pulls these switches back. And so what these do is they activate when the bumpers go out. So the first four are the CATA, and then when CATA is actually turned off, this one will kick out, which doubles your bonus. These next four are for LINA, and then this one will kick out when LINA is turned off. This one kicks back to light your 50,000 point bumper and the special. This one I drew a little depiction of a bulb that was on. This is the playfield light relay. So this one, when you push it in, when the game resets, this whole bar pushes in to push all these relays back. This one, when it gets pushed in, turns all the lights off. And then this is the tilt relay that kicks out when the machine is tilted. So that is what all of the under playfield relays do, in case you needed to know that information. So since I've cleaned the switches of the two relays that I wanted to test, and we didn't see any better results with the coils, what else could be the problem? Well, I think I might have an idea. So the scoring motor back here has two capacitors attached to it, and at first I was thinking maybe the capacitors control the speed of this motor, because if this motor were to be slowed down a little bit, the coils would fire for longer, and that might fix the problem with the coils. But now looking at these capacitors, I don't think that's the case. One of them is connecting these two switches here, and this one looks like it's doing the same thing. So I don't know if that's our problem, but these capacitors are from 1948. They're the originals, I can tell. And knowing old capacitors, they're probably leaky, and so I ordered a set of equivalent capacitors to replace these. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And here's what it looks like with new capacitors. As you can see, they're a lot smaller, and these wires are very rigid, so these capacitors aren't gonna fall or go anywhere. And I made sure all the connections were good. Let's go ahead and start the game and see if anything is different. And nothing sounded different. Let's see if the coils act any better. No, they do not. So that was not the problem, but it was something I needed to fix because I didn't want to leave old 1948 capacitors in there. So I don't think I said this, but I actually did put a new coil in just to see if that would do anything, and that actually made it worse. So I put the original coil back in, and now it's back to how it was. So I don't know if it's a switch or the coil. I'll have to figure that out, and I will come back with updates once I finally figure out what the issue is with these coils. Well, I haven't figured out the coils just yet, but what I have been doing is reflowing some of the solder connections around the switches here, just redoing some of the wiring that looked kind of suspect. So I fixed up several solder joints that I thought looked maybe like they were cracked or they just weren't proper solder connections. I did that both in the playfield and in the back, and I think it's made the coils better. It still hasn't fixed them, but I find that they fire out the ball a lot more frequently than they did before. So I'll put a ball in one of the coils and you tell me what you think. So I'm gonna do one of the 25,000 bonus coils. As you can see, it fired pretty strong that time. It doesn't do it all the time, but I think it's better. Like there, it did it the first time, and the bumper cap came off. Still haven't glued those down. I'm gonna have to do that. You can see it's firing pretty strong, so I don't think the coils are the problem. Let's look at this one. It was acting a little better earlier. Yeah, that one was a strong fire. Let me go ahead and restart the game so we can reset the bonus, and then I'll do these coils. So, do this one. See, that one ejected, but it wasn't super strong. They seem a little better than what they were before. No means perfect, but I think they're better. Like, that was a strong eject. That was semi-strong. And that was a pretty strong one too. So they have no issue firing the ball strong. It just seems like on certain ejects, not enough power is getting to the coils. So I did some switch sanding. I sanded some of the switches that were part of the relay that involves driving out these coils and decreasing the bonus. And I did some sanding in the back box too on the scoring motor switches, just in case that was the problem. So I think they're a little bit better. I'm still gonna have to figure out the root cause of it, but I think that eventually we'll get there. A couple things I did want to show though. The first thing is that I finally got all of the LEDs I needed, so now all of the 1,000 to 9,000 lights are all LEDs. So let's go through and see how they look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're all working and they're all nice and bright. Oh, another thing I did was the bell. Whenever it rings to score the 10,000 points, it seemed like it was pretty loud and echoey. So what I did was I cut up a little old rag and I stuck a little bit of it underneath the bell, and now it's noticeably less echoey. So I'm gonna fire that again, and then you can hear the difference between how it sounded before versus how it sounds now. See, the echo isn't quite as prolonged as it was before, and it's a little bit quieter. So I think it's a little better. So those are two changes that I've made. The third one is probably the biggest change, and I'll show you that now. So you know how when I got this machine, it was missing the back box door? Well, my dad and I got together and we made a custom back door for this game, complete with a key lock. So it's exactly the same dimensions as the game. There's a little piece of wood here that sticks out a little bit, and that was just so that we could align the key lock right for the little indentation that the lock goes into up here. And on the back, you can see the lock right there. Just operates like a normal lock, and that's a brand new lock that we installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in, and it's exactly the right thickness because there's a little indentation, a groove in the cabinet here, and this door fits into it perfectly. And then you just push that up like that, lock it. It took a few times to get the lock to be in the right position, but if I try to move it, that thing is completely tight, and I actually just triggered the tilt because I moved it. So what do you think? This machine now finally has a back door, and it's noticeably quieter when you are actually playing the game and you hear the scoring motors and the switches make a bunch of noise. So I think this is a good door. Eventually we're gonna give this a clear coat just so it has a little bit more gloss to it, and I think it'll get a little bit darker, so it'll kind of more match the color of this paint. But yeah, this was something that this game has needed for a long time, and now it finally has a door that is probably not too dissimilar from the original. So that is the biggest change that's happened within the past few days. And I also put an identical lock on the coin door that matches the back box lock. Was it needed? No, but this lock came with a wood washer. Let's see if I can tilt it. Yeah, a washer specifically designed to go into wood. So now when the nut is tight, it's not just gonna, spin freely and, damage the wood. So that is a better system. So now it has a slightly better lock than what it used to have. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the original, but I figured if we were putting a new lock for our back box door, might as well just put a new lock in the coin door as well. So that's another little change. So besides fixing the coils, what's next for this game? Well, it's going to be a lot of just polishing and tuning it up and making it look nicer. So eventually we're going to probably sand these wooden trim pieces a little bit, clean them up, polish them, make them look a lot nicer, because you can see there's like some black spots and, it just doesn't look the best. When I first got this game, I noticed that the nails that hold this trim piece in weren't in all the way, so I got a nail press and hammered those in the rest of the way. So now that's correct. This is actually being held in here properly now. But yeah, as you can see, these little wooden trim pieces are really not in the best looking shape, so I think we can get these cleaned up and made to look a lot better. Same with the ones on the back box. I mean, they look all right, but they definitely have that aged look, and I'd like them to look a little bit better. So the plan is we're going to take the back box off of the machine, the entire thing, take the back glass out, and we will make these look better. There's another little wooden trim piece that goes through the back box that will sand down, polish, and make it look a little better. And as far as the game paint, we're not going to try to repaint the game, obviously, but we are going to, clean it up, make it look a little nicer, get like these tape residue areas off if we can, and then, put maybe like a clear coat or something on the paint just to give it a little more shine and gloss. Me and my dad had talked about taking the plunger assembly out and polishing that just so it's a little shinier. As you can see on the face of the plungers here, you can see they once were shiny, but now they're not as shiny. So we'll probably end up fixing that and making it look a little bit better. And as far as the legs go, we're going to give those a treatment as well. We're going to clean them up, probably sand them a little bit, polish them, make them look better, probably give the bolts a little bit of a polish. One thing that we are definitely going to do is replace the feet on this game. You can see them right here. They are in really rough shape, and it's not really worth it to try to fix these because they're just so, corroded, and it would just take a lot of work. Plus one of them's missing, as you can see on this side. There's just a bolt screwed into the bottom of the leg because the foot, like you can see on that one, is missing. So we do need all new feet regardless. These feet are just very old and they've lost their shine, they're corroded. So we're gonna replace those feet. And so after we do all of that, this game should look a million times better. We're also going to do a tiny little bit of paint work on the back glass in spots where the light doesn't shine through. Like right here, you can see the light kind of is shining through here because it's peeled. Well, what I mean by when the light shines through it, there's specific sections of the back glass that allow the light to shine through, like as you can see on the boat, and then the lady down here. This part is not supposed to be a section where the light shines through, so we can just take maybe a little bit of paint that matches the colors and just paint that so that you don't have to see this light shine through it because there's an LED directly behind there. So just some little things like that. We're not gonna alter the game so that it doesn't look stock. We're just gonna clean these up, clean the wood trim pieces up, clean the paint up, polish it, give it a clear coat, and just give it some of its luster back that it once had. So that's kind of the plan we have going forward for this game. Probably a little bit more tune-up. Definitely get to the bottom of the coil issue, because that's really the only thing that's wrong with it at this point. One other thing I also need to do to this machine repair-wise is it seems like the flippers on the right are not as strong as the flippers on the left. And one reason that's probably the case is because this flipper down here is quite loose. And I took it apart just to look at it and see why that was. And I think it's because the metal piece that locks onto the rod assembly at a specific angle is kind of worn out. And so it has a little bit of give in it now. So I don't know if I can fix that. But it seems like the rest of the flippers aren't as loose. I mean, they seem pretty okay. But here, I'll show you the difference between the right flipper and the left flipper when firing the ball. So here's the right. You can see it doesn't really have a ton of strength. It tries. But now if we take a look at the left flipper, you can see it has a little more strength to it. A little bit more forceful. Let's look at the top one here. You can see it has a lot more force. So let me show you what the flipper on the right. Oops, I triggered the tilt. But yeah, you can see not quite as strong as the ones on the left, so that's gonna have to get fixed. It doesn't seem like it's a coil problem. Of course, now I have to reset the game because the tilt got triggered. They're firing at the same speed. They both reach full activation at the same time, so I don't think it's a coil. But you can definitely see the looseness in this flipper when it fires. You can see how it goes up, but then it kind of falls back a little. So that's definitely one reason why this flipper in particular is weak, because it's got a lot of play in it. So I'm hoping that maybe I can fix that metal piece so that it's not doing this, because that flipper isn't as strong as I would like it. You can see the coils there operated a little bit better. So I think we're getting closer to fixing the coils. It's probably just going to be more solder work, sanding down switches, and maybe I'll test the transformer to see if it's giving out the right voltage. Maybe it's a little bit low, so that'll be another thing I can test. So it seems to me the coils are better. We have to fix the right flippers. What else? Clean up the playfield. Yeah, that's another thing. Just give the playfield a nice cleaning, wax it so that the balls roll smoothly on it. Probably polish up the pinballs, clean up all these plastics, like on the bumpers, hot glue them back down so they're not just free. And, clean up the rest of this game, and it'll look and perform great. So there's probably more of the repair and cleanup that I'm going to show on camera, but that's kind of the main plan that we have right now for this game. So still got a lot of work ahead of us. Well, I've been playing the game for a little bit, and I think I just noticed another problem. So I was able to hit all of the Catalina bumpers. They're all off, but the 50,000 and the special didn't light. So there must be a switch problem in one of the left banks of switches, because there's one switch that turns on the 50,000 and special. So one of the Catalina bumper switches must not be active. As you remember, I labeled all of these switches. Most of these have to do with the bumpers. CATA, those are all hit right now, and those switches are all pulled back. So that's where they're supposed to be. The CATA switch is pulled back, so it knows that CATA are all pulled back, and so that one will pull back as well. This one right here. LINA are pulled back, and LINA is pulled back. So all the switches are pulled back, but one of them must be having a problem where when all of those are pulled back, it's not pulling back the 50,000 and special switch. As you can see, it's this one right here, and it's not pulled back, and it should be. So that's a new problem that I just discovered. So what I'll have to do is take a look and see which bumper has a switch problem, and I can't imagine that these are all too terribly different. I mean, when this one's pulled back, this switch is closed and that one is open. So I imagine that they're all gonna be like that. Let's take a look real quick. It's gonna be kind of hard to see, but A is correct, T is correct, this A is correct, this is L-I-N-A, and that looks like it's correct. Well, that one has a few more switches, so I'd have to look at it more. Kind of hard to see the ones down here. That one's good, that one's good, that one's good. These are for the, I think this is the LINA switch, and that's the 50,000 switch. Let me push on one of the bumpers, and we'll just see if that special lights up. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit L, just as a random one. Okay, that one is not lighting the special. Let's go ahead and hit I. Okay, it's not I. What about N? Okay, that one lit the special. So now the special and the 50,000 bumper are lit. And I kind of noticed that when I was playing it earlier, like when I go down the two lanes that automatically light CATA and LINA, it wouldn't immediately light the special. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset the game here actually. And let's do that. Let's go down the CATA, so those top four bumpers should turn off, and they do. And then we'll do LINA. So now all the bumpers are off, but this isn't lit. So I think it's one of the 5,000 point bumpers that you can hit that will then light it. Let's go ahead and hit this A over here. That's a 5,000 point bumper. Yeah, so that will light the special. So that seems to me like there's not a problem with the switches, and that's just some funky characteristic that this game has, because as you can see, the Cata switch is pulled back, but the four actual bumper switches are not. So that's how that is working. The A bumper's pulled back, obviously, because that's the one I just hit, and the LINA is pulled back because we went over that in lane, that ramp switch, whatever you want to call it, and the 50,000 in special switch is lit. Okay, I think I have that issue figured out. So when you light Catalina, when you turn all the bumpers off, it's only the L and the I bumpers that don't light the special if you hit them last. So if the last bumper you hit is either L or I, it won't light the 50,000 and the special. The rest of the bumpers are 5,000 point bumpers, and if one of those is the last bumper, it will light the special and the 50,000, so I'll show you that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just hit LI now, because those are both 1,000 point bumpers. If I hit N and then A, the 50,000 and the special will light. As you can see, there you go. But if I reset the game and do that again, and have either L or I be my last, it won't do it. And even when all the bumpers are off, it won't do it. So that could just be a characteristic of the game, or there could be a problem with both of these bumpers, because as you can see, if I hit both of them, they both don't cause the special to light up. So that could either be a problem, or it could just be that these two bumpers are only tied to the 1,000 point scoring relay and not in any way tied to this. Well, no, they would have to be, because if the L and I are lit, then the special wouldn't light. So I don't know. I don't think it's a problem, but if I hit a 5,000 point bumper, it will then light the special. So I can get it to a point where it will light, and so I guess that's not a huge deal, but if anyone else has this game and has any input on that, then feel free to let me know in the comments. Okay, update time. I finally figured out the source of the coil problem. I also figured out why sometimes the 5,000 point scoring didn't always advance. It would sometimes miss a turn. So let me show you Catalina in operation, because now the coils fire every time. So first, let's take a look at the 25,000 bonus coils. Super strong, super strong. It went down the special, so that's why it did a 50,000 score. Super strong. Let's look at this one. Besides it landing in there, you saw it was super strong. Super strong. It probably would have hit the glass if the glass was on it. Strong. Super strong. Super strong. See, it is firing out the ball every time. I'm going to go ahead and reset the game and show you that these coils work 100% of the time. So let's take a look at the first one. Worked. 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 Do the middle one. Worked. 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 Edge one here. Worked. See? It is fixed. All of them are now firing at the exact time that they need to. And I also fixed the 5,000 point scoring adjustment. Every so often, it would score only 4,000 because the gear would miss a turn. Now that no longer happens. See, every time it scores an even 5,000. So what did I find that led me to fix both of these problems and get Catalina 100% working? Well, the source of both of those problems was in the back box. And I'm sure now you can probably guess why the coils weren't working. It was due to this. Remember how so out of adjustment this was at the beginning? So I was studying the operation of this scoring reel, and I was, manually pushing in those switches that made the bonus go down. And I was holding some of the switches back with my finger so that they wouldn't hit. And I figured out that this switch right here on the top is what connects power throughout the whole thing, and that's what pushes the coils out. So I filed down that switch, I put it a little bit closer in so that it didn't have as big of a gap in between. That fixed the coils. They now fire 100% of the time. And as for the 5,000 points not always adjusting right, I initially thought it was this switch here, because this is the one that has the 5 indentations that scores 5,000 points by giving 5 pulses of power to this coil. Well, I pushed that switch in, I filed it down, and that still didn't fix it. So then what I did is I took a look at the wheel. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the power off so I can show you this. So then I shifted my attention to the 2 wheels, because maybe there was a problem with the wheel. So because the 10,000 point wheel was working just fine, what I did was I just wanted to see how things were different between the two, if there was anything different. And really the only thing that I could find was just the smoothness of the two was different. The 1,000 point adjustment just wasn't as smooth as the 10,000 point one. So what I did was I held in both of these coils, and I just felt how smooth the wheel was. And this one is butter smooth. The clicking noise you hear is the contacts in the back moving around. But this wheel is butter smooth. And then I felt this one, and it wasn't quite as butter smooth feeling. It was squeaking quite a bit. Even though I had fixed that issue in the beginning, the wheel's easy to turn, but I still heard a squeaking coming from it. So upon hearing that, I sprayed some lubricant inside the wheel shaft again. That did not change the squeak, but then I realized maybe it's the contacts that are squeaking. So I put some more lubricant on those contacts back there. I did it several times, and that made the squeak go away. And I could tell that this wheel was now spinning a lot more smooth. And guess what? That fixed the problem with the 5,000 point scoring. It was simply because the wheel was still a tiny bit gummed up, and sometimes when the coil advanced, the wheel hadn't made it all the way to the next position, like it hadn't made it all the way to there, and so that's why it was sometimes missing. So now that it has more lubricant back there, it now advances properly every time when it's given the 5 pulses by the scoring motor. So at this point, every problem on Catalina is now fixed. This machine is ready to go. And I also figured out what several more things in the back box were actually for. You remember these little wires that plug into these sockets on them, and they say 500M, 550M, and it goes all the way up to 850? Those are the replay values. So these are user adjustable. They don't all have to be plugged in like I thought they did. So if you want to set this machine up to only have replays given, free credits given at like 500 and 800,000 points, you can remove all the other ones and just keep 500 and 800 plugged in. So that's what these are for. So with all of these plugged in right now, this game will give you free credits from 500,000 points and every additional 50,000 points until you surpass 850,000. So that's what it is set to do. And this switch right here on the 10,000 point score reel is what gives you that free game. So every time the 10,000 point score advances, you'll see the coil assembly hit this switch here. And when you reach the value indicated on one of these connectors, this switch is what gives you that free game. So this only does something when you hit one of these values. So that's what this does. And this switch is what gives you 10,000 points when you surpass 9,000 on this score reel. So this switch will also close every time the coil advances. But when it surpasses 9,000, this is the switch that sends power to this coil to advance the gear on this by 1. So at this point, Catalina is ready to be buttoned up, played, just like it was back in 1948. So aside from doing all the cosmetic work that I talked about earlier in the video, there are still a couple safety things that I need to address in this game before it can be like totally, completely done. Down here we have the line cord, and as you can see, someone has been in here, obviously. There's electrical tape around both of the ends of the line cord. I do not like it looking this way, so sometime in the future what I'm going to do is desolder the line cord. As you can see, one end of it goes to the transformer and the other end goes here, which obviously someone soldered to a wire here and covered it with tape. I'm going to desolder the line cord and install a brand new one. And I'm also going to replace the cord that is going to the power adapter up here that powers the 2 big LED bulbs. This is obviously the original cord, and this is supposed to be flexible, but this cord is so stiff that if you try to bend it, the shielding around the wires will crack. And as you can see kind of up here, it's already cracked, and there's a couple more cracks down throughout this cord. So obviously this is an original 1948 cord, and so that will have to get replaced because that is a thing that I do not like. That could be a fire hazard if a wire got shorted. So the power adapter itself is working. I just need to replace the cord that goes to it. So those 2 things shouldn't be that hard to do. And a couple other things that I didn't mention about this game. You remember this outlet in the front that's designed to have a soldering iron plugged into it for when you're working on it? Well, it didn't work at all. So I took the screw out of it and just took the adapter out because I wanted to see why it wasn't working. And there was so much grime and filth in that adapter, it was insane. So I took this out, I scrubbed it like nothing I've ever scrubbed before, got all the filth out. All the contacts were super corroded, so I sanded all those down. I made them as tight as they could possibly be, so now when you plug something into it, it's not super loosey-goosey like it was before. And guess what? Now it works. And I was using it when I was using my soldering iron to fix some of the bad-looking connections on the relays up here. So that's working now. And I also replaced some of the fuses in here because the amperage wasn't correct. Like, for example, the 2 amp fuse had a 3 amp fuse in it. So the fuses were good, but they had a higher amperage than what was shown here up on the tag. So I put fuses of the correct amperage, so now we actually have a 2, 10, 15, and a 5 in here. So that was something I wanted to change just because I wanted the fuses to blow at the right time. I didn't want anything to get overdriven and not blow the fuse. So those two things have been fixed. So now this game is extremely close. It's 100% playable. I just need to fix the safety issues with those two chords, and then it will be 100% done. You remember how this game came in? It had so much wrong with it. It's all fixed now. So this game has gone through a complete transformation, and it will continue to go through a transformation once we clean up the paint and the wood trim and do everything else that we're gonna do to it. So all the mechanical work for this machine is done. One thing I might do as well, just to make this game a little more convenient, is right now the only way to truly power off the game is to unplug it, because as you know, the two LEDs in the back glass remain on no matter what. So what I might do is when I replace the line cord, I might drill a hole in the bottom of the wood and install a switch, like on a more modern pinball machine, and I would run that right out from the line cord and then connect that switch to the transformer so that you could just turn the game off, reach underneath, and flip a switch. So that might be a modification I do in the future so that I don't have to go and unplug it every time like I have to now. So right now I'm starting to wire in a new power cord and a new wire that goes up to the power adapter in the back box to power the two big LED bulbs. This is the power adapter from the back box with the stiff, cracked wiring attached to it. And watch what happens when I try to bend it. See, it's just cracking to pieces. It's because this wire is so old. It just has no flexibility anymore. So this is a hazard. It needs to be thrown away. So for this power adapter, there's a single screw that holds it in right here at the center, and then this little assembly comes off, and you can see where the two wires are connected right here. So I'll have to desolder those and then run new wire to these points because this adapter itself is fine. It just needs some new wiring. All right, here's my final wiring job. As you can see, I put in a new wire for the power adapter up here. I have that wired to the transformer, and I also have a new power cord installed, which goes to the transformer as well. I used heat shrink where it was needed, and I think it looks great. And I tested it out, and it works just fine. So now this machine has wiring that will not be a safety hazard now. So everything inside the machine, at least inside the play field, is completely done. So that's great. And if you're wondering, yes, this machine does have glass. I just haven't had it on there since the very first day. So I'm going to go ahead and put the glass in. This glass might not be original, either that or these side trim panel pieces are too loose on the glass, because the glass does not reach the edge of the inside of these two pieces. And so right now it's kind of stuck underneath. So I'm going to have to get a little tool in there and pry the glass up so I can push it in all the way. There we go. Okay, I didn't need a tool, I just needed to kind of shuffle it around a bit. So now the glass is in. Well, the glass is in, but it's not in right. You can see on this side it goes right up against the wood, and on this side it doesn't. So what I could probably do to fix that is just maybe put in like some sort of like foam or little material just to kind of, you know, support the glass, because it doesn't want to hit the edges of both of these wood trim pieces. So I might have to do that next time I take the glass off. And this machine also does have a lockdown bar, but I noticed when it was first on the machine, it wasn't really sitting right. It was kind of moving around like this. Well, if you look underneath, it's because this whole metal bracket here is bent. So that is held on with a couple flathead screws on the edges. So I'm going to take that bracket off, see if I can bend it back into shape, and then we'll put the lockdown bar on. And now with the lights dimmed, this is what Catalina looks like when the glass is on and it's all reassembled. Looks like a proper machine again. And so with that, Catalina is now a 100% working pinball machine, and it is ready to be played just like it was back in 1948. In part 3 of this video series, we'll really be dialing down on the cosmetics of this machine, like restoring the wood trim pieces, getting the plungers to look shiny again, polishing all of the metal components like the plungers and the coin mechanism to make those look nice. We'll give the paint a layer of clear coat just so it has some more shine. We'll restore the legs, we'll put some new feet on it, probably do some new bolts as well, and we're also going to correct a little bit of the paint peeling on the back glass just so you don't see that light shining through it, as I explained earlier in the video. So, still lots of work to do on this machine. All the mechanical stuff is done, so it's ready to play. It just is going to get treatment to make it look even better. So, look forward to that in part 3. That's all I have for this video, and I will see you next time.